Hello everybody, and today I'm reviewing the Kamerar SD-1 slider dolly. Hello everybody, my name is ZY and Kamerar has sent me a unit of their SD-1 slider dolly for me to review for you all. So I will begin with the build of this thing. This is a 23-inch bearing slider, so it is not a friction slider. That's a very good start. Bearing sliders are always better than friction sliders. And the whole unit is mainly constructed from metal and it is very durable. It does feel like this is a slider that's going to last. It's very solidly built. And when you shake it around, you cannot hear any loose rattly bits, so that's definitely good. Overall, this is a very solid feeling slider. Now we have the slider cart in the middle, which is very smooth. And then the mounting options for this slider, we have a standard 1/4 inch tripod mount at the back and also a 3/8 inch mount at the back, so you can just mount the whole thing to a tripod. More on mounting this thing to a tripod later on. In terms of mounting options for your cameras or your tripod heads on the slider cart itself, it comes with a 1/4 inch mounting screw with a 3/8 inch adapter in case you want to put some bigger tripod heads. Actually, most tripod heads have a 3/8 inch mounting slot. So this will enable you to mount your tripod head to the cart. Now, apart from just the linear slider, the SD-1 slider dolly Mark II also has dolly wheels. Now, the way this works is the slider is now being supported by 4 rubber feet next to each wheel. And if you want to use the slider wheels, all you have to do is retract those little rubber feet. There's a knob for each feet, so you have to retract all 4 of them until the wheels start touching the surface, and then the slider is being supported by the wheels and it is free to roll around. Now the wheels are very smooth as well, and provided you can find a flat and smooth surface, you will be able to pull off some very nice and smooth shots using the dolly mechanism of the slider dolly. And when you're done with the wheels and you want to use the linear slider, just the linear slider, and you don't want the whole unit to be rolling all over the place, all you have to do is bring down your rubber feet again, and the slider will be supported on the rubber feet and no more on the wheels, so your slider stays put. Now the wheel axle can actually be mounted on various different positions. There are 4 mounting slots for the wheel axle, 1, 2, 3, and 4, so you can either mount them nearer to the center of the slider or towards the outside of the slider. Now you can remove the wheel axle without using any tools. It's all the tool is set up. All you need are your hands to undo the knobs, take the wheel axle out and mount it onto a different slot. So you can mount them on 2 of the 4 slots. You can also loosen up the wheel axle and you can rotate it to any angle you want depending on what motion you plan to do with the dolly wheels. And then once you have it to the angle that you want, you can lock it down and then you can use it for whatever motion you're trying to pull off. Now, the most important factor that makes or breaks the slider is how smooth it is. Now, the Kamerar SD-1 slider dolly, I would say, is a very smooth slider. It doesn't feel jittery at all. The cart runs on 4 plastic bearing wheels, as you can see on the bottom of the unit. And it is really very smooth. This is very important if you want jitter-free shots in your slider shots. Also, I forgot to mention on this side of the slider, there is a braking knob which will lock the slider cart in place so it doesn't move around in case you plan to transport the slider around or you just want to lock everything in place. Or also, if you're planning to use the dolly wheels, then you might want to lock the slider cart down to prevent it from sliding about. Now, although this is a very small slider, it is also very stable. It can actually support some pretty heavy rigs. Let me show you. Alright, so now I have a 5D Mark III with a Canon 24-70 f2.8 version 1 lens, which is a very heavy lens, mounted onto the slider cart using a Velbond ball head. Now, if I turn to the side, you can see this setup is actually very front heavy. Now, you really shouldn't be setting up your slider like this. You should use a video head with a sliding base to position the camera more towards the center. However, just to demonstrate, the smoothness is not compromised at all. Now, although this is very front heavy, but the slider is still pretty stable when I put it on a flat surface like this. And all of it still works very, very well. It's still very usable and it's still very stable. Stands out like a champ. Now, one thing I really like about this slider is the length of it. It's 23 inches long. It's short enough to not be bulky, but it's also long enough to give you decent slider shots. Now, this is actually a very portable slider. It's very easy to carry around, it's easy to move around. You can fit this in small and tight places, and you can fit this into your car no problem. And because the length is just right, I was able to mount the whole slider using a single tripod. You don't need 2 light stands or 2 tripods. Of course you can if you want. However, I had it working just fine with 1 tripod. Of course, you will need a sturdy head and also a sturdy tripod. However, I mounted it onto a sturdy tripod with a Manfrotto 502 head, and it worked very, very well. All of it was very stable. It didn't feel like it was going to topple over to one side. It held up very, very well because the length is very nice and short, so you won't have too much of balancing issues. Now, you will have to find your own rope because it is not supplied, but on each end of the slider cart, there is a knob to tie your rope around. And then on each end of the slider, there is a wheel to run your rope along. So you can sort of make your own drive system using the pulley system on the slider Dolly Mark II. And the way you want to use that system is completely up to your creativity. However, the simplest way to use the system is to probably just tilt your slider to one side and then attach a pulley to the top end. So gravity is going to bring your slider cart downwards. And then if you want to bring the slider cart upwards, you can just pull on the pulley to bring the cart up and then slowly release the rope to let the cart fall back down again. Now, so far I am loving this slider, but if I were to complain, it would be the hard stops on both ends of the slider, as you can hear. So when the cart reaches the end of the slider, it bangs against the stopping knob quite hard and it comes to a hard stop. Now, what I would recommend Kamerar to modify on the slider is to add maybe a rubber stud on each end of the slider cart so that when it hits the stopping knob, it's sort of a cushioned hit and not a hard hit metal on metal. So of course, this is something you can modify yourself as well. You can just put some rubber padding on both sides of the slider cart to solve the problem in probably less than 5 minutes. But otherwise, this is definitely a slider that I would use. It is solidly built, it performs very well, it is small, lightweight, and portable at the same time. So this slider currently retails for $175 US, and given the quality of the slider, it is a very, very reasonable price point for a slider that works this well. So if you are looking for a very decent slider that's reliable, portable, and also not too expensive, you can definitely consider the Kamerar SD-1 Slider Dolly Mark II. And again, thanks to Kamerar for offering me this opportunity to review the SD-1 Slider Dolly Mark II, and after this, I shall leave you with some sample shots from the slider itself. So that's pretty much it for today. If you have questions and comments, just leave them in the comment section below. Subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow me on Instagram at Zaret Productions, and you can also pop over to my Facebook page at facebook.com/ZaretProductions. So that's it for today, everybody. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.